In the presence of the glaring effulgence of the bodily luster of Nārāyaṇa, everyone else's luster faded away, and everyone stopped speaking. Fearful with awe and veneration, all present touched their hands to their heads and prepared to offer their prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Adhokṣaja. Oh, how did that happen? Oh, I know why that happened. Because there's no purport. There you go. This, I have another PowerPoint. Tolerate me here. That PowerPoints are part and parcel of my lectures because I need to show things that I'm trying to relate. So we have two verses. The first verse, 23, doesn't have a purport, and the second verse has a purport. So I wanted to go over this first verse before we move on to the second. When I was looking at this, I was thinking that the English language just does not, in my opinion, have the ability to really fully express the richness that's there locked in the Sanskrit text. When you first read it, it's one thing, but then when you look at the English translation, when you read it, but when you look at the Sanskrit and you see what else is there, I think it's amazing. In the next verse, it reflects how, by the grace of the Lord, the demigods headed by Lord Brahmā, they were able to give prayers, even though they're talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's indescribable, but according to their ability, they were able to give prayers. So there's that other verse about, I think it was from Bhishma Dev's prayers, somewhere in the first canto, where it says that devotees of the Lord, they can describe, as far as their realization lets them, just like birds fly in the sky. The sky is unlimited, but the birds, they can fly in the sky, but only to whatever capacity they have, they're able to fly. It's impossible to reach the full length of the sky. So similarly, every single verse, even we got this verse here, in my opinion, this verse is amazing, even though there's not even a purport for it. So you imagine the ones with purports, how important these verses are. So anyway, Krishna is revealing himself through these verses. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he gives his term in the one purport, which we're going to cover later on from the Upadeshamrita, text 8. In the purport, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta gives his term, which is called Shravana, hearing. Shravana Dasa, that the Lord reveals himself through his holy name or through sound vibration, which is here locked in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. So now I'm going to go to the next slide here. So here, if you're looking at this, what I've done is I've broken up the verse into different vowels. So the Bhāgavatam, in the third canto, one verse that we read, it mentioned different types of meters that we find in the Bhāgavatam. Nothing can match the Shastra, especially the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, with its composition, the meter, and then what to speak of the content of the verses. So we read in the last canto that there's different types of meters. There's Gayatri, Tristup, Anushtup, Jagati. There's literally hundreds of different types of meters. Some say that there's maybe 600 different meters that are known of, and of these 60, or another 10% of them are common. Of all of them, the one that's called Anushtup is the most common. So that's what this verse is right here. Every pada, every line is 8 syllables. So that's why I highlighted here So just like in the first line, so you got tat, te, ja, sa, ha, ta, ru, cha, 8. So that way the lines, they rhyme. Tat, te, sa, ha, ta, ru, cha, sa, na, ji, va, sa, da, sha, ha. For me, I think that's incredible that you've got these poetic verses in meter, and they all fit together like this, and then when you analyze it, it's so full of meaning. If we were to really explain, or if the acharyas were to really explain everything that's connected with each one of these verses, even you could say that there's no purport to this. This is more or less not a very important verse. But just to explain the translation and then and the word for word would be at least 1 or 2 paragraphs. So anyway, I wanted to just go over this. You indulge me here. So first of all, there's this wonderful meter, anushtup, and then each one of these lines with the Sanskrit words is so full of meaning. It might be easy to miss when we just casually go over the translation. So the first word is tat tejasa. So that refers to the Lord's effulgence that's being manifested as he appears. The effulgence that's coming from his body. Tat tejasa. Brilliant. And then it says hata. So hata is a very strong word. It usually means to kill, hata. Or in other words, to absolutely annihilate, to obliterate. So what's being obliterated by his effulgence? It's ruchaha. Ruchaha refers to the effulgence of the devas' bodies. We live in right across from Hawaii National Park. So it's when the lights are off, not that many people even put their lights on, so even though it's a residential area, small little community. So when the lights are off and when it's no moon, a new moon, you can clearly see the stars in the sky. Because otherwise, if there's like a full moon, kind of obstructs it. But when there's no moon at all, and it's a clear sky, you can see all the stars, and they reflect so much that they can actually, like you can see the line of the trees, but it's so illuminated that the reflectors in the road, they reflect the reflectors, and you can kind of see where you're walking. So it's that there's that much illumination from the sky. So when you look up, they're gorgeous. But as soon as the sun comes up, they're absolutely gone. Everybody knows that, duh. But actually, you think about that. You got the luminaries in the sky, but when the sun comes, it obliterates them. So that's the sense of hata. It's that the Lord is so absolutely effulgent, so greatly effulgent, that the effulgence of the demigods, they're obliterated. You think about the demigods, you've got Surya, his body is made of fire, and all the inhabitants of the sun planet, they're made of fire. So when you look at it, when we look at the sun, we can't look at it without actually damaging our eyes. It's so brilliant. So you imagine the demigods in general, that's just Surya, what to speak of. The demigods headed like Brahmā, they all have these glaring effulgences. People that have had near-death experiences, they talk about beings that they come in contact with, these effulgent beings that they're in the presence of. So these are and those are not even demigods that people have near-death experiences. They're not necessarily demigods. So you can imagine the demigods headed by Lord Brahmā, how effulgent they are. And just like the stars, when they come in contact with the sun, they become obliterated. So I just want to really point out here in this first line how we can imagine how effulgent the Lord is, that everyone is absolutely shocked when the Lord appears. And then the next line, Sorry, I'm having trouble with my mouse. Okay, so Sana Jiva Sa Sad Vashaha. So we're familiar with this sana in prasana. Prasana, we know, prasanatma, enlivening. When we have spiritual realization, we're enlivened, prasana. So what is sana? Sana actually comes from that word. Sana means without enlivenment. In other words, it's fatigue. So what's fatigued? Jiva, the tongue. The tongue fell silent, like speechless, just like dead. They can't say anything. They're absolutely speechless, seeing the Lord appearing because of his effulgence. And then it says, Sana Jiva, then Sad Vashaha. Sa means she and Sa means he. So Sad Vashaha, it means that all of them in that assembly, they actually became not only astonished, but actually fearfully astonished. That's how like shocking the appearance of the Lord is when he comes. In Siberia, over the last few years, there's been at least 4 occurrences that all of a sudden at night, the sky turned just like daytime. And nobody knows why. Probably it's because their North Korean neighbors are doing nuclear tests, because after that they feel the ground shake. But it's not the ground shaking that scares people. The first thing that scares them is that all of a sudden night turns into day. And like, wow, they're just absolutely shocked. And everyone who experiences says they're like that. They're just absolutely fearful. So it's the same way with the Lord. You have all these effulgent demigods, but they are nothing compared to when the Lord comes. His effulgence is so shocking, so astonishing, that they're fearful. Sad Vasaha. Sorry. And then the third line is, so Murdna Dritanjali Puta. So Murdna refers to everything like above the neck and above. And Drita, like you're familiar with this word, like Drita Vrata, like a terrible vow. So in this sense, it means like very much so, or exaggerated. So what is exaggerated? Anjali. Anjali this is a universal thing. When people pray, that you put your hands together folded. So that's what Anjali is. And so what they're doing is Drita Anjali Murdna, very like intensely exaggerating, exaggeratingly, I'm sure that, I don't think that's a word, but anyway, in a very exaggerated way, they're putting their hands together like slightly above their head, and then puta. So puta, we know that means purification, purified. So in this sense, it means that they felt themselves impure in the presence of absolute purity. We know descriptions, and once or twice I had the opportunity to actually physically be in the presence of Srila Prabhupada. But anybody that was around Srila Prabhupada, big devotees or small, they felt universally like they were in the presence of such purity that they felt impure. They felt like Srila Prabhupada was looking right through them. I also have that experience, when I come in contact with saintly persons. When Radhanath Swami was visiting a couple of years ago, he came over to Mahesh and Brihan Prabhu's house. And everyone was there. I was chopping vegetables, and everyone really paid their respects when he walked in. He was there to do a program. And if you ever seen him, what he does is he has this penetrating look of love. It's like absolute love, without any pretense. And he looks at you almost like without blinking. And when he was looking throughout the room, I was just one of the persons in the room, and when he got to me, it seemed to me like he was staring at me for, I felt like it was like 10 minutes, It felt like that until I finally had to look away. And I had that experience, that I had to look away because I felt contaminated, So in the presence of someone who's of such purity, you feel like you're contaminated. So, or your own contamination, dirtiness. So what this verse is saying in this line is that with greatly exaggerated, they had to have this Anjali, prayerful, their hands in prayer above their head, touching their head, and maybe slightly looking down in veneration. And then what I'm saying here is confirmed in the next line by the word Adhokṣaja. Upatastur Adhokṣaja. The last line, what it says is Upatastur. It means prayers when you're slightly leaning forward. And then Adhokṣaja is very significant. There's many ways to translate Adhokṣaja. So I'm going to say 3 ways. One, in reference to this verse, is Adho means to look down, and Aksha means eyes, and then Ja means birth, or in other words, to cause to be. So with Adhokṣaja is that personality that causes everyone to look his eyes down because of his greatness. Another way it's Adhokṣaja can be translated is that Adha means to curb or to cut down. Adha, to go down, cause to go down. And then Akshaja means perception. It's because, show me. In other words, the eyes, we value our eyes so much, so anything that we see we can accept. That's called Adhokṣaja. So in other words, it means direct perception. So Adhokṣaja means that personality, or that which is beyond the perception of the senses. And then another way it can be translated is the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. The alphabets are called Akṣajas because the first letter, the first sound is A, and the last sound is Ksha. So that's called Aksha. From A to Ksha, or in other words, all the letters of the alphabet. And so what this is Adhokṣaja, that the description of the Lord is beyond words. Just like in this verse it says, Sana Jiva, that the words cannot describe him, our tongues become mute. So in a similar way, Adhokṣaja is referring to that he's beyond our power of description. And then Srila Prabhupada actually quotes a verse. Let's go to the next slide. There you go. Sorry, again, I'm having some trouble with my mouse because I got to go from one screen to another. So Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse in reference to the word Adhokṣaja. Adhokṣaja Akṣaja Jnanam Jata. So Adhokṣaja Jnanam, or Akṣaja Jnana, means knowledge that is from the senses. So he is beyond that. Adhokṛta means it's like a futile endeavor to understand transcendence. And Akṣaja Jnanam is like normal perception through our senses. Or Akṣaja is what is born of the senses. So anything that we get from our senses, that kind of jnanam is jata. It's just, you'll never understand transcendence because we're using our dull senses. That's what it means. So this is the bona fide Prabhupada said because I looked it up. It's Adhokṛta Akṣaja Jnanam Jata. That's the meaning of Adhokṣaja. So I thought I would just analyzed this verse. I thought it was amazing when you look at the Sanskrit a little bit more closely, the richness of what's there. And the importance of Adhokṣaja, we're going to find especially in the next verse, because even though the Lord is imperceivable to us, He's making Himself perceivable to the demigods present there, starting with Lord Brahmā, and letting them pray. So this is the next verse. So it goes like this. Apyarvag vrittayo yasya mahitvan ma bhav adayaha yatamati grananti sma kritan nugraha vigraham. So, api, so still, even though they don't have the power to describe the Lord, arvak vitaya. So, vritti is your occupation, what you do or what you're capable of doing. So, arvak, vak referring to the speech. So, beyond mental activities. And then yasya, whose, so whose, we're talking about the demigods. So they're able to glorify mahi, to glorify the Lord too, but atmabhu adaya. So atmabhu is Lord Brahmā, who is self-born, and then all the other demigods that are there. And then yatamati, so even though, and then mati, it refers to opinion or the or discrimination, specifically using the ability to use the mind and the intelligence. So yatamati, according to their different capacities, and then grinanti sma, they were able to offer prayers. Grinanti is to glorify. And then krita anugraha. We came across that word the other day, anugraha. Graha means influence. Or to grab. It usually refers to the planets. They're called graha, their influence. So anugraha and then kripa is that you're given the ability by the influence of someone else. So it says here, manifested by His grace, the Lord's grace, and then vigraham, His form, transcendental form. So the translation is, although the mental scope of even demigods like Brahmā was unable to comprehend the unlimited glories of the Supreme Lord, they were all able to perceive the transcendental form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by His grace. Only by such grace could they offer their respectful prayers according to their different capacities. So, this does have a purport, which I will read. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, is always unlimited, and His glories cannot be completely enumerated by anyone, even by a personality like Lord Brahmā. As it is said that Ananta, the direct incarnation of the Lord, has unlimited mouths, and with each mouth He has been trying to describe the glories of the Lord for an unlimited span of time, yet the glories of the Lord remain unlimited, and He therefore never finishes. It is not possible for any ordinary living entity to understand or to glorify the unlimited personality of Godhead, but one can offer prayers or service to the Lord according to one's particular capacity. This capacity is increased by the service spirit. Sevo mukke hi jiv adao. Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu 234 means that the service of the Lord begins with the tongue. This refers to chanting. By chanting Hare Krishna, one begins the service of the Lord. Another function of the tongue is to taste and accept the Lord's prasad. We have to begin our service to the unlimited with the tongue and become perfect in chanting. and accepting the Lord's prasad. To accept the Lord's prasad means to control the entire set of senses. The tongue is considered the most uncontrollable sense because it hankers after so many unwholesome edibles. Or not evils, whatever. Therefore, forcing the living entity into the dungeon of material conditional life. As the living entity migrates from one form of life to another, he has to eat so many abominable foodstuffs that finally there is no limit. Yeah, can you imagine all these nasty species of life, and even the human form of life, the terrible things that we consume. So the tongue should be engaged in chanting and eating the Lord's prasada so that the other senses will be controlled. Chanting is the medicine and prasada is the diet. With these processes, one can begin his service, and as the service increases, the Lord reveals more and more to the devotee. But there is no limit to his glories, and there is no limit to engaging oneself in the service of the Lord. Okay. Mukham karoti vachalam pungang langayati garim yat kripa tamaham bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada refers to this verse. It's, as far as I know, this is actually originally from the Padma Purana. I couldn't find reference to that, but I know for sure it's from the Padma Purana. I couldn't find the reference for it. But anyway, at least it's quoted in the Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So, Ata Sri Krishna Namadi. So this is very important, and this is what we're going to cover pretty much for the rest of our class. When in this verse it says, Ata Sri Krishna Nam Adi, beginning with Krishna's holy name. This is the beginning of our perfection, and it's done through the tongue. However, in the present condition, we are not able to understand Sri Krishna beginning from his name, his form, his paraphernalia, his pastimes, all of those things are absolutely out of our scope. Why? Because na bhaved grayam indriya. So grayam means the senses are so dull, there's no possibility we can understand Adhokṣaja beyond our senses. But seva mukhehi jivada swayam eva spurat yada. So by the tongue, both tasting Krishna prasadam and by chanting, we get the chance to purify ourselves, and then we get spurti. Spurti means the sudden appearance, the sudden and gradual appearance of the Lord. It comes. So this is what we're going to talk about in later slides and like that. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's this kind of obscure verse that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has an amazing commentary on. It's Balang Bhāgavatam Chaham Kama Raga Vivarjitam. This is in the 7th chapter when Krishna explains that we can see him in all of the different elements of the world. I am the taste and water, the ability of man. And then he says, Balam Bhāgavatam Chaham. I am the strength of the strong. So does that mean that all these strong guys that are lifting weights, pumping iron, that Krishna is them? Well, yeah, in one sense, but that's not what Krishna is talking about in this verse. When he says Balam, who is Bala? Bala is Lord Balaram, the superintendent of the Sadhini potency of the Lord. Through Bala, we're able to approach the Lord. And who is Balaram? Balaram is the representation, or rather, the spiritual master is a representation of Balaram. Lord Balaram is the Adi Guru. The Guru, the preceptor, the teacher, he's empowered by and a representative, the external manifestation of Lord Balaram. Balaram gives us Bala. And what is that Bala? It's spiritual strength. And what is it? Spiritual strength is kama raga vivarjitam. It's to be free from kama and raga, attachment, lust, to be free of the attachments of this world. That requires strength. We cannot do it on our own. By the grace of the Lord, we are able to be free of the pushings that are enslaving us in this world. So that's what it means. Balang balavatam chaham kama raga vivarjitam. To get the power to give up kama and raga, that comes from the strength of Lord Balaram. That is real spiritual strength. And then that's in the 7th chapter, and in the 10th chapter, the nutshell verse that everybody knows is Tesham Satata Yuktanam. So Satata Yuktanam, of course, means constantly engaged in devotional service. So we're going to analyze that as well. How important it is to get the mercy of the Lord. It has to be unbroken. Yuktanam, complete absorption. Otherwise, we're just stifling ourselves, and we're not getting to the other side. We're cheating ourselves of the taste of advancing in Krishna consciousness unless it's satata yuktanam. So, tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti korvakam, with great love and attention, and then dadami buddhi yogam tam. So dana is charity. So dadami is that by my grace I give the intelligence to advance in devotional service. This is what it means. Only by Krishna's grace are we able to perform service, able to glorify Him, able to understand anything at all about devotional service. This entire world is karana. It's on the other side of the causal ocean. Everything in this world has a cause. Again, I'm sorry about my squeaky chair here. I'm sure it's making a lot of noise. Sorry. Everything here is causal. Something has a cause, that has a cause, that has a cause, that has a cause. But on the other side of the causal ocean, in the spiritual world, that's all causeless. The only way we're going to understand Adhokṣaja is through his causeless mercy. It's causeless, it has to descend upon us. So now I'm going to go to the next slide. So I only have 2 slides left. Not a whole bunch of slides today, but this one and the next one are quite complex, and I'm dependent on these visuals in order to explain what I'm talking about. So the main word that I wanted to focus on was this address of the Lord as Adhokṣaja. He's beyond our sense perception. So if you're looking at the slide that I have, I'm not sure if it's big enough for you to see. You do have the ability, by the way, on Start Meeting that you can blow things up. Either if you've got a touch screen, you can just pinch, or if you have a regular screen, you can just click on it and then it says zoom. So if you don't see these words, then you can click on them. That might be helpful. But we're going to start at the top, but go from right to left. So we have our senses, our indriyas, and they go from the grossest to the most subtle. So we have our olfactory sense of smelling to perceive earth. And within earth, all the other elements are there. So we can taste, we can see, we can touch, we can hear, and we can smell the earth. First sense is olfactory, then we have the gustatory, or the taste, the ability to taste, and that's because we're able to interact with water, which has all the other elements in it. So we're able to not only taste, but to see, to touch, and to hear water as well. And then visual, seeing, we're able to see fire, anala, which we can also touch and hear. And then tactile, touching, or vayu, the air, we're able to touch it and hear it. And then the last, the auditory, is the most sensible, the most subtle of all the senses, and that's come. That's the ether or space. that most subtle sense, by that sense, we can perceive things that in a very unusual way. Now, we'll cover that in a minute, what I mean by an extraordinary way. So these smelling, tasting, touching, seeing, and hearing, these are all external, or what is called vaya in Sanskrit, external to us, both the senses and the sense object. And then we have our internal senses headed by the mind, manasa. So if you see down here, it goes to the next group a little farther down, and that has to do with perception. Three things, one after the other: cognition, the perception of pleasure and pain, and then desire and aversion. So because we're dealing with a very subtle level of the mind and the intelligence in the false ego, it's almost instantaneous. Unless you analyze it, you're not aware that there actually is a progression of these things. But by analyze, you can see that actually as one comes after the other. But it's so fast that practically there's no time elapse. So cognition is the first thing. So there's three different types of cognition. So if you're looking at this, you see I've got some various icons on the side. So the first is definite cognition. So it's just like this. Let's say if you're looking out in a crowd, you can see that, you know, some of them are men and some of them are women, or some of them are kids and some of them are adults. You can see these forms. So that's definite. You recognize. But then if you're a little too far away, either visually, you know, because it's, Adhokṣaja, we always rely on our eyes, or with any of the other senses, either you're too far away or you can't touch them, you know, it's too dull to hear, or it's too rough to really feel, to tell what it is, etc. If either the thing is too visually far away or other senses aren't in contact with them close enough, then it's indefinite. You can see there's something there, a form or a smell or some sort of a feeling, but you can't tell precisely what it is. So those are the two kinds of, you're conscious of something, either definite or indefinite, but then there's mistaken also. So there's the analogy about the rope and the snake. So when you accept a rope as a snake or a snake as a rope, that can be very dangerous. That's just plain mistaken cognition. So those, all three of those, there's definite, indefinite, and mistaken cognition. Then the next thing in the sequence is once you have cognition in any one of those ways, then the next thing is you automatically either experience pleasure or pain, and that's due to either present or past experience you have of the sense object. Then the next thing that happens is once you experience pleasure or pain, then you experience either desire and aversion for that object, and that has to do with future plans, what you're going to do with it, and that's controlled by the buddhi. That's when you make a choice. Do you want it or do you want to avoid it? So all of those things come one after the other in sequence, like domino effects. Cognition, pleasure and pain, and then the desire and aversion. You know, because it's much more subtle and therefore almost like instantaneous. Okay, so we started from the right. Now let's go to the left. Now there's something else that happens. When you have this kind of any kind of cognition, it's either determinate or indeterminate, or the Sanskrit terms for this is savikalpa or nirvikalpa. So kalpa refers to a determination, something that's like very, very definite. So if it's nirvikalpa, that means it's you're definitely perceiving something, but it's without qualities, or it's very vague qualities. And then savikalpa is very definite, perceivable, categorical qualities. So it's just like this. If you see a chair, the first thing you recognize is the object. It's a chair. But then the next thing in sequence, almost simultaneously, but actually comes after that, is you see, well, it's made of wood, it's got cushions, maybe it's got a backing that's made of whatever that's called, wicker, whatever. You know, you start to really notice the colors and all those things of the chair. So one is to recognize the chair, and then the other is to next differentiate what are the qualities of the chair. So we just went through this from the most gross to more and more subtle. And this is all called laukiki. Laukiki means ordinary perception. There's something beyond laukiki, and it's called alaukiki. That means extraordinary, beyond ordinary, extraordinary perception. So now we're going to go from the left to the right if you're watching this. At the top category, it says there's samanya lakshana. So lakshana means a particular type of designation, you could say like that. Lakshana is how to identify something, like a flag or something. You know, it tells you what is what. So samanya, sama means equal. So samanya lakshana is when you see an object, just like I mentioned before, when you have cognition, if you're in a crowd of people and you're close enough, you can see, okay, these are men, these are women, these are boys, these are girls, these are kids, and these are adults. You know, you start to differentiate like that. Oh, these are black people, and these are white people, etc. You start to classify. If you walk outside, you can see that, okay, these are rocks, these are trees, these are animals, and even if you've never seen this particular animal before, or the particular rock before, so, oh, that's unusual, but you still know it's a rock. Isn't that amazing? Or you've never seen this particular type of tree, but you can tell it is a tree. So samanya lakshana means when you start to make differentiations and classification of things. Now that's pretty extraordinary if you think about it. How do we do that? How does the mind differentiate and start to classify things? That's like in a whole nother realm, much higher than just seeing things or touching things or smelling things, rather than just ordinary sense perception and seeing what its qualities are. Even beyond that, even subtler than that, it's extraordinary that we start to make classifications of different things. Okay, and then when you go down, here's another one. So that's samanya lakshana, and then jnana lakshana is another realm. That's even more subtle. Jnana lakshana is when you make different associations with those perceptions. So I mentioned before how the auditory sense, the sense of hearing, even though you can't taste or touch it or smell it, but you can in a certain way with the extraordinary alaulika sense. So it's just like this. If you see a picture of an ice cream cone, you will think within your mind and actually experience that looks delicious. How is it possible to see something, or somebody describes something to you, like, man, I had this amazing pakora at the Sunday feast yesterday. The smell was just extraordinary, and when you ate it, your taste buds were all lit up. I don't know, however people can describe something they just love, and they say, wow, that sounds really tasty. So how are you able to experience that? When you see like some ice cubes, you see and say, oh, that looks cold. How can something look cold? Because you're not touching it. You're only touching it with your eyes. So if you think about that, I mean, that's what advertisers do, right? They present something to you. You're not actually in contact with the object, but they're presenting these ideas to you. You're seeing it and hearing about it, and then you're experiencing it, and you actually start to desire it because you have this extraordinary sense, jnana lakshana. So that's an even more subtle experience. This is certainly extraordinary if you actually meditate and you think about this. Yeah, that's an amazing thing. But then beyond this, there is something that's the most subtle of all, and that's called yogaja, that which is born of yoga. This is intuitive perception that comes from performing the yogic system. There's two classifications. There's the Yunjin yogins, which are the practitioners, and then there's the Yukta yogins, which are those that are perfected in the practice of yoga. So we're going to go over this in relationship to us, the practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, and specifically those that are trying to advance in devotional service, beginning with Jiva Dao, with the tongue. In the or throughout the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, you will objectively see that it is full of prayers. The Bhāgavatam introduces us to the Lord through the prayers of His devotees. Those that have seen the Lord were able to get their vision by meditating, glorifying, memorizing the prayers of those devotees. The Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is primarily nothing but, but for the most part, is the prayers of the devotees to the Lord. That's what this Purana is. The Itihasas, like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, they're primarily histories. And the Puranas are histories with lessons from conversations of different personalities from the histories. This Purana, the Bhagavad Purana, is primarily prayers. I was just listening to a lecture that Chaitanya Charan was giving, and somebody asked him an interesting question. He said, "Hey, so is the Earth, is it flat or is it round?" Just to bring up a controversy. And the way he gave the answer, I thought was very interesting, because he used to be on the, or maybe he still is, part of the committee for the Vedic Planetarium. So they studied in depth the 5th canto. And his conclusion was, with the other devotees, is that the description in the 5th canto of the structure of the universe, that model is for meditational purposes. The 5th canto, the description of the universe is from chapter 16 to 25, and in those chapters, maybe 10% of the verses deal with the actual structure of the universe. All the rest of them are prayers of the inhabitants of different varshas for the Lord. That's what it's comprised of. So it was a more elaborate answer than that, and why so little description is given of the universe. But one thing is to see that even in this case, and in every other case that you can point a finger to in the Bhagavatam, it's not so much the stories like the other Puranas, or what to speak of the Itihasas. This is a special Purana that is almost like the histories are given as an excuse to bring up the prayers of the Lord. So the prayers are there because these are our windows into the spiritual world. By seeing through the eyes of those devotees of the Lord, their prayers to the Lord, we can get a little glimpse of what the spiritual world is, and we can enter into it. In the Bhagavad Gita, again, in chapter 4, there's that, Krishna says, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yoveti tapata. Sounds easy, right? You just hear the glories of the Lord, you understand the glories of the Lord, and you're going to go back home, back to Godhead. That's what it says. Just understand me in truth, and that's all you need to do, and you'll go back home, back to Godhead. Well, there's a little bit more to that. It is easy. As soon as you do that, as soon as we start to hear about the Lord, then we are on our way. But we have to traverse. We're on our way. We have to traverse it. And what do we have to do to get to the other side, to the end of the journey? In the purports of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, right at the beginning, Srila Prabhupada says that in order to understand the Bhāgavatam, we have to be pure in everything, including our eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Says you have to be pure in all these things before you're able to have the existential ability situation that you'll be able to understand purely. Because if we can understand with a pure heart, or we can hear rather with a pure heart, then we can understand the Bhāgavatam. In the second verse of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, it says, Nirmat Saranang Satam. Satam refers to the devotees of the Lord. And they must be Nirmat Sara. So Matsara means envy. You know, we have to completely give up any kind of trace of envy for any other living entity. That means we have to give up our morbid attraction for this material world. Once that's gone, anartha nivritti, then what do we have? What do we need from anybody else? Why we should be envious or criticize anyone else? We don't need anything from this world or anyone. So only when we get free, nirmat saranam satam, are we going to be able to relish the Bhāgavatam, or to the degree that we can give up nirmat sara, to that degree we will be able to, as Srila Prabhupada says, to see the personality of Godhead in the pages of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. It's described, and I forget the verse. God, I can't remember the verse. Anyway, this Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is just like the sun. Yes.
Just be aware, it's 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock, so I got 1 hour? Right?
No, you have a half an hour.
Half? Oh, so we're going to leave here at 9:30.
Because we have to be there.
Okay, so I'll be ready in 20 minutes.
Okay, no problem.
All right.
You know the name of the papers you were looking at? Was it military benefits or was it CalPERS?
CalPERS.
Okay, all right.
I'll bring them with me. Okay. Oh, all right, so I have to I have to get this done in 10 minutes. So I'm just going to go like fire here. It's brilliant, just like the sun, just like described about the Lord coming like the sun and dazzling everyone. Similarly, this Bhāgavatam, when we understand it, it'll be dazzling like the sun, and all other literatures or any other interest that we have will be just like stars. They'll disappear. And that's called spurti. Spurti is the sudden appearance, sudden and gradual appearance, the presence of the Lord in each and every one of us. Knows what it is, and when Krishna appears, we can feel His presence through kirtan, through reading, through the association of devotees, or through the association of saintly persons. So I wanted, with whatever time I have, I wanted to analyze this extraordinary alaukiki perception, or that is born of yoga, from Yunjan, from the practice, to yukta, perfection, sattva yuktanam. And this is all done by the grace of Adhokṣaja. So let's go. This is the last line I'm going to do. I'll try to explain as fast as I can. So we have analysis from Rupa Goswami, from Jiva Goswami, and from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Rupa Goswami, we know this famous verse from the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu about the progression from anartha nivritti. It goes to nishta, to ruchi, to asakti, and bhav. So Jiva Goswami analyzes this in a very special way in the Bhakti Sandarbha, that when we get to the stage of nishta, that's when Krishna Nam will manifest. He's gradually manifesting himself throughout the anartha nivritti stage. When we get actually to nishta, then we'll be able to understand and relish the sound vibration of the Lord. He reveals Himself through the pages of the Bhāgavatam, through His holy name, through glorification. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta calls it Shravana Dasha. Then we come to the stage of ruchi, taste. Then we can understand the rupa, the form, and then ashakti, the qualities of the Lord. And then we approach bhava. In the bhava stage, we can enter into the lila. The lila, to enter into the lila, it has two stages, parikar and vashishta. Parikar refers to the devotees of the Lord that will introduce us to our eternal service, our eternal relationship, which is our form. It's a form of love. Just like in this world, everything is made of fire, water, air, ether, the great elements. So similarly in the spiritual world, we have a body, but it's not made of gross matter. it's made of love. So that body will become manifested. It will expand, just like this body expands from a tiny, tiny little sperm. It expands to the huge body we have. So similarly, when we have spiritual realization, we are always going to be 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair, tiny spiritual spark. But we expand into our spiritual body, and that body is made of prema. So there's these different stages that are described by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Shravana Dasa, Varna Dasa, Smarna Vasta, and then Smarna Dasa until we get to Sampati Dasha, which is prema. So Smarna Dasha, that has 5 different stages. One is recollection. This means when we can remember and feel the presence of the Lord and understand His Leela. Remember it, but it's occasional. It's still interrupted by the things of this world on this side of the causal ocean. But when we come to the next stage, it's absorption, and it's very close to, almost synonymous with dharana of the yogis. It's like when we become lost in that absorption. We still come back to this world of designations, but when we're in there, that's dharana. We're completely absorbed. And then the next stage, the third, is meditation. So this is just like the dhyana stage in yoga. It's practice of that full absorption, but we can break it. We come in and out of it. Whereas the next stage, which is constant remembrance, or anusmriti, that's unbroken remembrance. You don't stop. You don't come back to designations of this causal world. You're in that world, and then that comes to the next stage, which is samadhi. Samadhi is when you actually enter into that other world. You're no longer in this world of designation. It doesn't exist for you. You're only in unbroken samadhi. And once you're there, then you have the opportunity for parikar. Parikar, these are the parishads. These are the eternal associates of the Lord, purified devotees of the Lord that are on the other side of the causal ocean. They introduce you, or us, to Vashishta. See, Vashishta means what is our eternal service to the Lord? What is our spiritual body that is there to be able to serve the Lord? Parikar and Vashishta. And then once we have that, then we're able to actually enter into the Leela. Not just experience the Leela, but step into it. And then once that's there, that is called, then we're able to get to the stage of Sampati Dasha, which is prema. So very quickly, I'm going to just read this from the Bhakti Sandarbha of Jiva Goswami. This particular section, I'm going to skip the Sanskrit, but he says, first, it is expected that one should hear the Lord's name in order to purify one's heart. Once the mind and intelligence has been purified in this way, one can hear about Krishna's form, through which one's qualification to visualize it is obtained. When the form of the Lord has been clearly visualized, one can experience His qualities. Once these have been clearly understood, one develops one's own spiritual characteristics through the particular characteristics of the Lord's associates. Thus, once the name, form, and qualities and associates of the Lord have been realized, a clear realization of Krishna's activities follow. I don't have time. I really would have liked to have read from the purport of the Nectar from the Upadeshamrita, text 8, where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta goes through these different stages in detail, but I just simply don't have time because I have to get to a funeral. That's why I came here to California. So, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute this and just ask if anybody has any questions or comments, although I don't really have time to answer and I had to go. So sorry. Duty calls. But anyway, thank you, Prabhus, very much for listening in. I appreciate it. I can maybe, if somebody wants to say something, go right ahead. I'm going to be getting changed and ready to go, but I can hear you.
Thank you for your class. I particularly liked what you started with, which was the kind of pulling apart and analyzing, diving deeper into the individual Sanskrit terms in the first verse in particular. Would you say that practically any verse of the Bhāgavatam would lend itself to that kind of, explosion?
Well, what I was going to say is that the verses of the Bhāgavatam, we shouldn't take even one verse or one word of it as if it's not important. The more we meditate upon it, that's how Krishna is going to reveal his Nam to us. The same way when we chant our japa, every single syllable, every single word, we should be just rapt with attention. And when we do that, Krishna will reveal himself through it. So every single verse can be expanded upon unlimitedly. But it's just that the Bhāgavatam, you got to call it quits at some point. Otherwise, we just expand and expand and expand. So there are some verses that are purport because, you get to other verses. So, you can pull every one of those apart and just look at especially the meaning of every Sanskrit sloka. And that's why Srila Prabhupada did this. We're so indebted. He just didn't just give an English translation or just the verses and the translation, but he gave the word for word. And if we pay attention, then we can really see, there's a lot. There's a very, very deep meaning, even beyond the translation, by really looking at each word in depth. So that's my take on it.
Nice class, Ramananda. Thank you.
Were you able to kind of, not tease out, because there's not, explore these meanings just by going to a dictionary, or what are your sources?
Classes that I hear from other devotees, and then if you utilize the database, you click on it, and you can see how Srila Prabhupada uses those words throughout the other translations. You get a feeling for it, and then you can always go to the Moner-Williams dictionary and look up that word, and then you put it in context, and the meaning starts to come out, and then you really feel like, oh my goodness, Krishna is speaking to us here, revealing, what's there. It's just so rich with meaning that's not conveyed so easily in English. I don't know if it's like that for other languages, because English is the only thing I speak. Maybe it's other. What? My dad, I'm here for his funeral. My dad, he learnt Russian just so he could read Dostoevsky and some of the other authors, Russian authors, because he saw that other languages were so rich. So it's like the more you go to the west, the more mlechas. Mlecha means those who can't pronounce the Vedic sounds. They're called mlecha. And they're like uncivilized people that can't speak. Some of the other languages, they're more closely come from the original Sanskrit, so they're richer. Whereas English is really very pitiful. But still, you can get a lot.
Thank you, Ramananda. I was thinking of the third verse of the Bhāgavatam where it says, Prihata Bhāgavatam Rasa Alamayam, where it means a relic. It says that this the last line, perfect in all respects, do relish it. This book dealing with the science of the eternal relationship with the Lord. Rasam is juice. So it's interesting that the whole Bhāgavatam we're being instructed how to, it says, O expert and thoughtful men, relish Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, the mature fruit of the Vedic tree of Vedic literature. It is emanated from the lips of Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice has already been relished by all, including liberated souls. So you're giving us a lesson in that today, to relish, to develop the full.
I'm just going to throw one more thing in because I really got to go. There's this wonderful verse that Chaitanya Charan Prabhu quotes. I actually wrote him. Didn't write me back. Too bad. He must be busy. But anyway, I did get one week with him once. But he quoted this one verse, but he didn't say where it came from. And typical Indians, they speak so fast. Anyway, as far as I understood, what the verse goes like this: Aneka shastram bahuveti tavyam. At least that's what it sounds like to me. Anyway, so aneka means various. So aneka shastram, that means that there are so many shastras. How in the world can we read them all? And then bahuveti tavyam, what that means that, and with all these shastras, just like we went through this verse, there's so many meanings that you can get out. Just like Adhokṣaja, there's many ways you can translate it. So there's so many shastras, and there's also many, many interpretations of the shastra. And then, but the problem is, alpasya kalam, balavasya vigna, that alpa means that we have very meager intelligence, and also we have no time, and also balavasya means vigna means there's so many distractions that we have. So Shastra is very vast, so many different interpretations of the Shastra, very little brain substance, and distracted all the time, and no time to read everything. So therefore it says, sasara bhutam tad aparitavyam. That means that therefore we should take the essence of the Shastra. There's no way we're going to be able to understand everything or read everything. But if we take Sara, the essence, that's the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. So if we just concentrate on the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam and relishing every single word of it, that'll give us perfection. We don't have to read everything, but we can read and relish the Bhāgavatam, and then everything is there, because it's Sara, it's the essence.
Don't forget Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, don't forget Bhagavad Gita, yes. Yes, don't forget Bhagavad Gita. That's the foundation. Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry, but I have to go right now. So thank you very much.
Thanks.